You're tuning into the O&P Check-In, an SPS podcast. I'm Brendan Erickson, a regional sales manager at SPS. This show brings you the latest happenings in the O&P industry. We're unpacking trends and news from this tight-knit orthotics and prosthetics community. Co-hosting today with me is SPS sales account manager Travis Rakes.
Hey, Brendan, glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. Let's get started.
As a clinician, you know the importance of proper foot support in treating and preventing pain. PowerStep ProTech orthotics are designed with podiatrist-recommended support to provide superior stability and comfort for your patients. With a firm yet flexible arch and a deep heel cradle, these insoles help alleviate plantar fasciitis, overpronation, and other common foot conditions. Learn more about how PowerStep ProTech can enhance patient outcomes at spsco.com.
Dive into our latest The Clinical Minute episodes, where we spotlight groundbreaking O&P solutions. In the most recent video, discover the Elevate Movement Swift custom carbon AFO and the Step Drop Foot Sock, an innovative approach to foot drop support. Tune in now and elevate your expertise, 1 minute at a time. Follow the link in our show notes or visit the SPS blog. Okay, hello listeners. Today we are chatting with Ryan Fann, co-founder and prosthetist of Reform Prosthetics, to learn all about the ways they're supporting para-athletes to achieve their goals. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you for joining us. I know you're super busy. It's always tough to take time off, especially in this busy early quarter of the year. But how about you just kick us off by sharing a little bit about yourself and your journey into O&P?
Okay. Well, it would start when I was 3. I had an accident that resulted in the absence of my left foot. And luckily, I was raised by parents that weren't afraid to let me figure out what my own limitations were. So by the time of age 5, I was playing football and breaking prosthetics before I outgrew them. I played all kinds of sports. I did about as many activities you could imagine in terms just to challenge myself, from skateboarding. Anything that would test the limitations of the prosthesis, I did it. Ended up playing football in high school and was lucky enough to be selected for the Tennessee East and West All-Star football game, which led to me finding out about the Paralympics, which unfortunately I didn't know about them until I was 19. And the only reason that happened is because ESPN did an article, or they did an interview, like a short piece about me playing in the East and West All-Star football game. And went to Tennessee State University. I didn't have intentions of being involved in athletics, but learning about the Paralympics and potential at being successful in track, I spoke with the head coach there, Kelly Carter, and he was more than happy to have me a part of the team, despite never working with someone with limb difference. And I was lucky enough to have a running prosthesis donated to me by an incredible friend and colleague, Chad Simpson. A year and a half later, I was fortunate enough to qualify for the 2004 Paralympics. I competed in the Open 400 and the 4x4 relay. I got a bronze in the Open 4 and a gold medal in the 4x4 relay, and we still hold the current world record.
And that's the toughest race, man.
I wouldn't argue that. It'll definitely challenge you. The opportunities opened up a lot of doors to travel beyond Tennessee, which is, aside from running in the Paralympics, I'd only been to Panama City, Florida. So I appreciate the experiences. I appreciate the help that I had from prosthetists who donated their time and their materials to provide me something that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford. And ultimately, in 2008, I missed the Beijing Games by about 1/10 of a second. And I'd been interested in the field of prosthetics, and I was working part-time at that period of my life and wasn't really dedicating all of my time to track. So once I didn't make the 2008 Paralympics, I decided that if I wasn't going to be able to give it my all, I wasn't going to do it at all. And so I diverted everything to becoming a prosthetist and trying to become the best prosthetist I could and pay it forward based on some of the people that were great to help me. So fast forward, I'm now a part of Reform Prosthetics, but I think my more accomplished joint venture was co-founding Amputee Blade Runners. So that is a charity that provides, 20 to 25 grants annually to anyone in the States. We only help domestically right now. Yeah, the goal is just to give people back the opportunity that I had. Like I said, I wouldn't have been able to afford a running leg. And it's not that I couldn't run without it, but it allowed me to reach my peak performance, and it allowed me other opportunities that I think not only gave me experience in life, but broadened my horizons and hopefully have turned me into a better person.
That's awesome. Ryan, I've had the pleasure of knowing a lot of the kids that you guys have helped do Blade Runners and amputee Blade Runners, and honestly, I've seen you around. I know a lot of your story. I've followed you since I became an amputee in 2003. You know, I really think that you've got a really great perspective on para sports. I'm interested to hear how you see the para sports have evolved since the 2004 Paralympics when you were involved.
I think the biggest thing is there's a lot more support. Now that the U.S. Paralympics and the U.S. Olympic Committee have kind of combined and the resources are being more close to equal, I think that's the biggest thing, because when I did it, and again, I'm not complaining because I still appreciate the opportunity, but the stipends that you would get for training quarterly based on meeting like A standards, B standards, and certain, Paralympic standards, they were probably 5 to 10% of what the able-bodied Olympic athletes got. And I understand it. It's economics. So, there's not a lot of eyeballs in the Paralympics at that time. I think that from 2003 to now 2025, more people are aware of the Paralympics. There are a lot more resources. The funding and support are a lot better. Ultimately, awareness. Again, for me, I think the biggest tragedy was that I lost my foot when I was 3, but I didn't even know the Paralympics existed until I was 19. And I had remained active forever, and I went to the Shriners hospitals and constantly breaking prosthetics. So, yeah, ultimately, it's been significantly improved in terms of just awareness, support, and just advocating to get the right financial assistance out to the athletes so that they can really put in the effort that they need to train, because you cannot be an elite athlete and work a full-time job and go to school. It just eventually you're going to hit a wall. Whereas if you want the cream of the crop, you got to be able to support them, and you've got to be able to provide the training facilities. You've got to be able to provide the training and the education. You've got to be able to work with their hometown coaches that may not be experienced with people that have limb difference and things like that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of improvement, and hopefully they'll just continue to build off of it. And I would like to see more awareness on television, more ability to watch live performances of the Paralympics. And I know they're working on it, and hopefully it just continues to improve.
Yeah, I definitely think that you nailed it, man. I mean, the support that's there and the desire, I think that the demand will naturally bring the eyeballs, and the television audience will be able to see that live pretty darn soon. And I'm hoping for the upcoming 2028 Olympics. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. The other thing is it's an art to be involved with athletes who are going to push the boundaries like that as a prosthetist. I think if you talk to your average, good prosthetist out there, they're going to treat the average person, and that's someone who has lost their limb from divascular issues or diabetic issues. And so there's not a lot that you're going to learn in school about it because they don't test you on it. And so it's really tough to get the experience. And I hope that our field can find a way to improve some of the competitive boundaries that we have in terms of not always wanting to share information, just afraid that will affect your business, because ultimately these are humans. I don't think anyone would want to have competing heart surgeons not talking about techniques that would save their grandparents' life. And I'd like to see some of those boundaries be removed in our field to where we can all share ideas and experiences without being afraid that the competition is going to interrupt that success that you have with your business. So, sharing more information and just getting that knowledge out there, because right now I think there are probably 5 or 10 prosthetists that most people would hear and commonly think, yes, I associate them with being involved in the Paralympics. You can go from Dave Rotter, you can talk about Francois Vanderwatt, you can talk about Peter Harsh. And anybody I'm leaving off, I apologize. I'm kind of freestyling it. And these are all great things, but what happens if they die on a plane crash and then all that knowledge and experience they have goes away with them? I just hope that we can all figure out a way to come together and pull that knowledge together so that more people can be aware of it and more people can be helped. And the more people that are helped on that athletic level and that higher functioning level, then the more people the U.S. Paralympics can reach out to and get involved and just have a better pool to select people from.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, you kind of got a little shot right now, because I'm going to ask you, since you were an athlete yourself, and now you coach athletes and you also prepare them with their prosthesis, what are the unique challenges that somebody with limb difference who is an athlete at this super high level, what are the unique challenges that they face that you've found that maybe people aren't aware of?
I think the biggest thing is just what technology is going to serve the best needs. It's is the Reebok foot going to do it, or is the Nike foot going to do it? And I think there are different school of thoughts. I think ultimately the user has to be in peak condition. So I don't think you should rely on the equipment to make up for a lack of mobility, for a lack of range of motion, for a lack of strength, for a lack of cardio. So I think you got to put it all together. If you just focus on the prosthesis only, then I think you're going to be missing some key components. You need to have a good coach, and that coach doesn't necessarily have to be associated with prosthetics or limb difference, but they can easily learn about things. And so I think that's one thing that's important. The other is just making sure that if somebody has aspirations to be more active, to do 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, or they want to sprint, we need to make sure that their residual limb health can tolerate their normal activities. So if you're still struggling to just make it through a 10-hour day of going to school or going to work, then the idea of you being successful running, to me, is not very likely. So you got to make sure that you've got them in a nice environment for the residual limb to remain healthy, to withstand the impact that their leg is going to take, because that's much, much more different than walking. And then you're dealing with moisture management, how to keep the residual limb healthy through excessive shear and excessive moisture, and maintaining proper suspension. I think these are all things that people deal with traditionally, whether you're above knee or below the knee. When you deal with, transfemoral, that's where you're finding the right knee joint. And I worked with one guy when I was back in Nashville, and we probably tore through 10 knee joints that had all been recommended. So now there are more options than there were back there, but then you're just understanding angles, so are they waiting on the knee to extend forward? And if so, that's going to slow them down. So how do you fight that? Hydraulics are not always going to be the solution, because they're eventually going to blow out through that type of force. And that's where, after me just kind of beating my head against the wall and just wondering, how do we do this? I happened to bump into the right person that shared a tip, and he said, hey, put a wedge behind the distal posterior socket, and that's going to affect the knee angle. And when you're running and walking, you're really not flexing past 70 degrees, so there's no need for the knee to go further than that. So setting up a tennis ball or some sort of bumper back there to block that knee flexion angle forces it back an extension, so that they're not waiting on that prosthesis to get out in front of them.
Ryan, I love that. Everything you're saying is everything I went through when 2008, I tried to make the Paralympics as well. And I showed up to the Endeavor Games in Oklahoma, and I just missed the cutoff. And that's how I got introduced to sitting volleyball, which is what I play now. But we were going through the same gamut. My process and I taping, dodgeballs and tennis balls to the back of the socket and trying to figure out how to get that extension out there. And, I do think that what you touched on previously, it makes such a great point about we don't have enough experts in the field that really do understand kind of going through all that. And I really do appreciate you and the time that you've put in with amputee blade runners, because you've been out there doing this, and the experience that you get with each one of those kids that you've worked with is helping you with the next generation. I'm curious, what do you do for some of these athletes that are coming in and you're trying to help them with those techniques, and trying to get them to that higher level of competitiveness? What kind of techniques are you using to help them overcome some of the stuff that you previously mentioned?
In terms of just working on running mechanics, there's a few things that I would consider. One is there's actually a website. Would it be okay if I it won't let me. I'll share the website with you guys later. Maybe y'all can share that as a part of this podcast, but it's literally called How to Run with a Prosthesis. And it gives you just very simple things to look at, just to understand simple biomechanics of it. The next step is just really creating a relationship between the prosthetic user, the prosthetist, and the coach that is going to be a part of getting this athlete to hopefully peak performance, and making sure that if there's any concerns that the coach has regarding, if this person has a prosthesis and, they're limping, am I being too hard on them if I'm pushing them, if they've got to do, 300 meter sprints at race pace. And I think just making sure that you bridge the gap on any of those and make sure there's no questions, so there's no unnecessary reservations, and you're having someone being treated different. And maybe that's just my school of thought. My head coach, Kelly Carter, is one of the most amazing people I've ever worked with. And I just looked him dead in the face and I said, look, all you have to worry about is whether or not my foot is intact or broken. I was like, if I break my prosthetic foot, then I can't do anything. I said, but aside from that, if it looks like I'm hurting, treat me like everybody else, because that's all I'm looking for. And I promise you, if there's an issue that is limiting me beyond my mentality and my physicality, if I have a residual limb issue, I'm going to let you know personally so that we can address that. And then in terms of the residual limb health, keeping up with the changes, because again, walking, we lose fluid every day in our leg, but running, you're going to lose it a lot more and you're perspiring. So you just really have to educate people. The prosthetic management protocol must be drilled into them. It can't be something that you talk about and then it's like, yeah, well, I forgot, I was in a hurry, this, that, because you're only going to pay the price. If your limb health is not good, it's going to affect your long-term performance, and you don't want to be in a position where you travel to another country and you're ready for one of the biggest events of your life, and all of a sudden you've got this large hematoma, or you've got, you wore your liner for 12 hours and didn't take it off, so your limb is macerated and blistered up, and now you've got to run as fast as you possibly can and deal with that. So it's just, you just have to be on your P's and Q's, and you've got to make sure that you're listening to people and you're communicating, and that you are making sure that everything you do is as good as possible.
No doubt. You've really nailed it with the physicality, the mentality, the preparation, the execution. And it just blows my mind how much more would probably go into somebody with limb difference. I mean, athletics is hard enough. So it's pretty awesome to hear you say how the mental aspect of it and really staying with that fortitude and desire and discipline it's just amazing. But let's switch gears a little bit, because we want to talk a little bit about amputee blade runners and some of the organizations that are out there. So if you could spread the good news about first your organization and then any others that are out there, that'd be awesome.
So me and Aaron Fitzsimmons co-founded Amputee Blade Runners. He was a mentor of mine, and I did my residency with him. And he is a part of the solution. He is always willing and able to put forth his effort to help someone. And really, I think after I didn't make Beijing, I was kind of lost athletically, and I needed something to give me a reason to stay in shape. And so he and I started training for a triathlon, and he's athletic. And he's competitive, and there's a little bit of pride between us. And I think when he realized that I didn't have any quit in me, and just kind of what it meant to me to get a running prosthesis and how it opened up opportunities for me, the idea of how do we give that back to somebody else really come about. And I'd say he voiced his opinion on that very much. It was always something I wanted to do, and I'm thankful that he pushed me into getting that process started and was a part of that. And so, yeah, we started off really small in 2011. We're primarily based out of Nashville, but I do help people in Savannah, Georgia. So if you are an applicant, so the application process, you can go on amputeebladerunners.com. I imagine you also could find a link to that to all the social media platforms. But you just apply for the grant. If you're an adult, we would ask that you try to do at least 3 5Ks. We don't care how fast you're doing it. You can walk it for all I care. It's ultimately just we're trying to see, what is your determination level and what can your body handle? If you can't get through a 5K without your residual limbs being extremely uncomfortable, then we have to figure that out before we decide to have you fly into either Nashville or Savannah and you spend a week with us and us try to make a miracle happen. Because we want good outcomes, and we don't want for there to be high expectations and poor outcomes. If you're a child, we'll waive that, because that's a different story. They may have never run 3 miles in their life, let alone walk it. But but those are really the biggest requirements. We do also require that you've been using a prosthesis for a year. A lot of that is so your residual limb has matured a little bit, so you're not changing as much. But also, I think it's good for between the ears. There's a lot to process when you deal with limb loss, especially as an adult. And technology is great, but there's no magic solution to any of it. All these people out here that you see successful in the Paralympics, their equipment help, but ultimately their drive and determination and their willingness to be so dedicated to something is why they are there. And I find that year period is necessary to get someone mentally prepared for what it takes to learn how to use a running leg. So we'll help you out. We make the prosthesis from start to finish. And if we change your socket design, we're going to replicate that so you have it for walking. That way you don't have a prosthesis that is trying to do something in terms of fluid dynamics to your leg walking, and then you've got a completely different design for running, because then your body's like, whoa, what's going on? You don't want a PTB socket for walking and a TSV socket for this, because the fluid dynamics are constantly constantly changing, and it's a state of, it's in flux. You don't like that. But we'll continue to help you for an additional 2 years. So if something changes, we'll keep helping you. If you're an adult, if you're a child, I think it's an additional 5 years. And then after that, you just have to reapply. So that's the amputee blade runner process. Some other organizations I know, I think out of North Carolina, there's Move for Jen. And so her mission is to help people that have lost their limbs from cancer. And we've actually had some collaborative efforts between Move for Jen and Amputee Blade Runners. So that's a pretty awesome organization. I think the largest one out there, everyone is going to know about Challenged Athlete Foundation. That's an incredible organization to where I don't know if it's accurate today. It's been a while, so forgive me if I get it wrong, but I think their application process opens up in the fourth quarter of the year, every year. And so that's the time to apply, and they don't just help you with equipment, they'll help you with travel if you're doing certain events and you can't afford that, and different type of training stuff. If you're doing triathlons, I think they'll help you get bicycles and things like that too. So those are the main two that I'm aware of. Oh man, there are more, and I'm just kind of going blank. There's a bilateral BK out of Central Florida. I should know his name, and I apologize if he hears this, but he does a lot of things with kids. Like they do a pirate camp. I think they work a lot with POA out of Orlando in terms of helping people. I got to figure that out and send that to y'all. But yeah, there's at least 4 organizations that I'm aware of, and I imagine there may be some other smaller ones that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, Ryan, you're talking about Never Say
Nick.
Never.
Yes,
Foundation.
thank you,
Yeah,
Nick.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And then, there's one more, Wiggle Your Toes. There you go. So that's a fifth one.
Up in Minnesota, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Wiggle Your Toes. Yep. I'll throw a few out there for you, Brendan, too. Catapult down in Texas is a really good one. They're out there helping people. I know that there are a couple people, maybe not on the sports side, but on the prosthetic side, there's like 50 Legs. I think they have some stuff that they do. But yeah, Ryan was right on the Challenge Athletes Foundation. Ryan, I used to work for CAF. I ran the programs for a lot of years. Their process is the fall. They do the application. They give the grants out in the spring of the following year. But I think they're running leg grants are open year round. So
okay, awesome.
That's awesome stuff, man. I will say that you guys do phenomenal stuff at Amputee Blade Runners. I've known so many kids that have gone through that process, and it is truly making a difference with providing these young amputees the opportunity to do what every kid should be able to do, which is run. And I think that leads to the possibility of having the door open to the Paralympics and sports, and even high school and college sports in the future for those kids, because they now see themselves as an athlete as opposed to sitting on the sidelines. So what you're doing is great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I feel like I'm pretty fortunate to even be a part of it.
Hey, do you find that most people reach out on their own, or that a orthotist has kind of nudged them and pointed them in the right direction?
I would say in the beginning, it was mostly the individual or a family member on their behalf. But what I appreciate and I'm glad to see is here recently, I think there are more prosthetists that will reach out on their behalf. And I think that's important because, again, my perspective of this field of prosthetics is that there's a lot of competition between companies. And I think that can create boundaries that are unnecessary. And for me, my mission is to always focus on helping the person and to not make the hometown prosthetist feel threatened at all. And by having them get involved and collaborating with us, I think that that's the easiest way to kind of lower down your guard and just, I'm here to do one thing, and this is a charity. It has nothing to do with the Reform Prosthetics when I work with Amputee Blade Runners. And if someone's coming from Milwaukee, that's far away from Savannah. I have no interest in trying to manage their care for the rest of the year. So I think it's good that we have the hometown prosthetist be as much a part of the process. So I see that increasing more and more, and I hope it continues to be that way.
Innovation, man. That's like the thing that I think has gotten us all to where we were from generations before, right? There's so many cool knees and feet out on the market that have allowed us to be able to run. And I'm curious of what you think innovational changes, what would you like to see in the next decade, right? For not just even our amputee community, but maybe the whole adaptive sports community.
I think this may be an unpopular opinion. It might not be as sexy as people want, but again, I think you can have a Ferrari, but if you don't know how to drive it, what is that? What's the purpose? So anything we can do to just work on residual limb health, anything that's going to, bring the interface of the prosthesis and connect it more solidly, especially for transfemoral, anything we can do to really combat and mitigate moisture management issues, because I remember being at the Chula Vista Training Center and it's like every other lap, somebody's got to sit down, take their liner off. They're pouring cups of sweat out of it. And so for me, I think that that's where there's a lot of room for improvement. And that's probably the most difficult area to address. So I would say that's top on my list. And then after that, just working on, I think, better knee technology. And I think lastly is, I don't know that this is specifically technology. I think it might just be kind of antiquated thoughts in terms of, for me, I have a Boyd amputation. So it's just a little bit longer than a Symes. So they disarticulated my ankle and then they placed my calcaneus part of it into the ankle mortise. So I have my heel bone fixed there. And so clearance issues are a problem. And I've heard so many people with my limb length or even actually shorter. And that's the more surprising one say, well, I'd love to get a running leg, but my prosthetist says that, there's not a foot that'll work for me. And that's unfortunate because there often are a lot of solutions. And if there's not, you can work with a company like Phil Hour, and Amputee Blade Runners has built a relationship with them close enough, and they're small enough to where you might be able to make some you can customize something to accommodate someone's needs. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I hope it does.
Now, Ryan, I had that conversation just 2 days ago with a prosthetist who was dealing with a very similar limb length issue, and yeah, there isn't enough out there, but what is out there isn't well known enough, or those relationships like you're saying. And being a transfemoral ex-runner, I would call myself. I will say you are spot on with the whole, the socket technology and the ability to like mitigate sweat and those kind of things. That is the future. That's what we need to focus on for sure.
Wow, it's really cool, guys. So Ryan, we always at the end kind of give you an option to, kind of just expand on anything that we may have not hit on. So first and foremost, want to thank you for your time and all of your insight. But is there anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think this is awesome, and I hope many people get an opportunity to listen to it and hopefully get something from it. I would say that something I hope improves within the U.S. Paralympics, if it hasn't improved since 2016, because I was the team prosthetist for the Pan American Games in Toronto. I do know that there are common names that often travel with the athletics team, the track and field team, during big competitions like World Championships, Pan American Games, and the Paralympics. And again, that's going to be like Dave Rotter, Francois Vanderwatt, Peter Harsh. And again, if I'm missing anybody, please don't take it as an insult. It's just I'm old and I don't remember everything. I would love for the U.S. Paralympic team to assemble like a team of prosthetists, and essentially all of us have the same information about the runners who are going to go to these events, so that we're prepared in terms of who's their hometown prosthetist, what is the make and model, of their prosthesis, what's their suspension like, what are common issues that they have, so that if you're selected to be the team prosthetist, when you travel to a different country, you can't take your office with you. You can't take all your resources with you. So the more you know, the more you're going to prepare. And that way you can really address the needs if something does come up in a pinch, so that these athletes don't get stranded out here and become unable to compete because you weren't given all the information, and you certainly can't bring all the tools. So I think the more information you have, the more tools you can think about. And I think that is just something that I haven't seen happen yet. And I hope that someone hears it and thinks it's a good idea, because again, if we're only relying on one prosthetist and that person just ends up no longer being around, and that puts everybody in a compromising position. But I think if you get a pool of coaches or prosthetists together that all are like-minded, and then you just start to build upon that, and then that way they can pull from these different prosthetists that all share the same information and can hopefully provide the same service, which is keeping these athletes upright, healthy, and moving in a fast direction forward.
Yeah, I will say, Ryan, you make a phenomenal point. I actually was in Toronto for those games when you were there competing in volleyball. But you make a huge point too. And one of the things that I think would be important on that is that not every prosthetist is familiar with Phil Hour feet or Oster feet for running. And then you have the need for having that process that takes care of the athletes that may not need their running prosthetics, but whatever they brought with them that may or may not have broke while we were there. So yeah, I think a team is a phenomenal idea, and that's something that we should definitely be sending up to Flagpole. It's great stuff. Awesome. Well, Ryan, thanks for joining us today. Brennan, I think this was one of my favorite interviews so far.
Oh, it was awesome.
You're talking to one of my dear things of sports. So, and you were someone I followed early on when I got into becoming an amputee and knew I wanted to do sports. So it's kind of been full circle having you around on the podcast here.
I'm just great to be a part of it. The journey is what matters most.
Well, thank you for joining us so much, man. We really appreciate you and your time and of course, all the work you're doing. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I appreciate you guys. And I hope you have a good rest of the day.
To learn more about Ryan and the good work he does at Reform Prosthetics and Amputee Blade Runners, follow the link in our show notes.
Thank you for listening to the O&P Check-In, an SPS podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, be sure to leave a review and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a question or topic suggestion? Email us at spspodcast@spsco.com. See you next time.